Welcome to the NBA 2K G League show. I am your host, Varun Chari, and welcome to the show. So in today's episode, I want to talk about 5 G League players who I think need an update in 2K. I don't want to just focus on just the 2K side. I'm also going to talk about these players, about their season, and kind of why I think they deserved a case for an update in the game. So one important thing first to just talk about is the way these guys and like the way their rating is going to get up is they have to play NBA minutes for that rating to go up. So, they could be averaging like 50 points, for all we know in the G League, right? But if they don't play NBA minutes and at least like a certain amount of games in the NBA, they need to know that the players had enough of a quantity to pull from in terms of like statistics to kind of feel like they can actually, move his rating up. And I think that's the tricky thing. That's probably going to be the case for some of these guys in this video. It's just a situation thing where they're not really able to get minutes because, they're very loaded at that position that they're playing for that NBA team on a two-way. And so I mostly am focusing on players who are on those two-way contracts. But but you never know. There's always injuries that happen. And so I think that these 5 players at least, could be in the future guys who could honestly get a 2K rating bump because they're going to probably get NBA minutes. And I honestly think that they'll kill it once they get to the NBA. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so for our 5th player, we're going to talk about Adama Sanogo. Yes, the 2023 UConn champion who immediately signed a 2-way contract as soon as he went undrafted in 2023 with the Chicago Bulls. So I think that he needs a bump, probably especially on his rebounding and his defensive side. So here's his stats for this season. So in about 17 games this year, he's been averaging 15.9 points per game, 10.5 rebounds, 1.4 assists, 0.8 steals, 1.5 blocks, while he's going to the line about 2.6 times, and he's shooting the ball at 79.5% from free throws. And then he's shooting about 1 3 a game, while shooting at about 33.3% on 0.3 makes. So, like I said, going through his rating right now, I think, defensively, I would probably actually up his blocks because I think 56 might be a little bit low. Maybe move it up to like a 63, 64. So maybe his rebounding could go into the 80s now. That's something I'd be really curious about if he actually like plays like NBA minutes. And maybe it'll increase his help defense, but yeah, that would be something I'd be curious about. And maybe also his steal. I think his steal could also move up maybe to like potentially in the 50 range. Sanogo's a really interesting case because, you got Nikola Vucevic, who has been having a really good year with Chicago, and maybe he's a guy who does get traded by the Bulls. And you know what? If Chicago really trades Levine or, Vucevic or Lonzo Ball or, whatever, maybe they give more minutes to Sanogo. I mean, Sanogo did have a few games last season, especially towards the end where he actually got to play. He had some really good games, and I would be actually curious, like, is he going to get that opportunity again, and can he be a center for Chicago moving forward? So that's just something to kind of keep an eye on. And yeah, let's see what happens with Sanogo. All right, number 4, we got Leonard Miller of the Iowa Wolves, who actually plays for the Minnesota Wolves and is usually just on assignment most times. So I think Leonard Miller's having a really great season this year. He's looked really good this year with the G with Iowa. This is his second year with the team. He played G League Ignite his first year and then went to Iowa. Well, it was got drafted by Minnesota, and then they've really had him in Iowa pretty much really his entire rookie season and honestly most of his second season. So I'd say he's kind of like a project player. He was pretty young when he was drafted. I think he was 18 maybe or 19. So in 16 games, in about 37.9 minutes per game, so he does play almost a good amount of a game. He's averaging 24.4 points per game, 11.8 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 0.9 steals, 1.2 blocks, while shooting 87% from free throws. And he's going to the free throw line about 2.9 times a game. He's shooting about 4.5 threes while making about 36.1% from three. And he probably makes about 1.6 threes a game. So I would say for Miller, you know, I think maybe his 3-point shooting could maybe go up a little bit. His free throw can maybe go up. You know, going to his offensive consistency, I think maybe that could also go up. I think that's kind of looked pretty good. I mean, when you're averaging about 24.4 points per game, I actually could see this offensive consistency. Obviously, again, NBA minutes, but maybe it goes to like a 70. I'd be really curious about that. You know, looking at, I think his blocks and his steals, I think his blocks could maybe go into the 60 range. I think his steals could go up a little bit. You know, defensively too, I would actually think his offensive rebounding, which is now at 3.4 offensive rebounds a game, maybe that goes up a little bit. I think also, I think his defensive consistency, that could probably go up a little bit more. It really just depends, I mean, how well he does in his NBA minutes. But, you know, Miller, I think what's interesting is because he's playing so much in the G League right now, if Minnesota decides they want to trade him because, you know, they decide they want to give that spot to somebody else, especially somebody who can probably help their team like right away, you know, Miller's an intriguing project for other teams. Like if I'm the Miami Heat, I would be really interested in seeing Leonard Miller with the Heat because I think he could actually be a Heat type of player. You know, he really hustles. I mean, you can pretty much see he has like a 76. But, you know, I think he's that kind of guy who will go out for rebounds, hustles. You know, he can, at the top of the perimeter, he can knock down the three-pointer. So, but let's see, because he is going to be with the team still for one more year. And then that's also a decision that they'll have to make in October if they're going to bring him back for the year after. But Miller is a really intriguing prospect. And so let's see if that ring goes up. All right, so our next player is Brandon Williams of the Dallas Mavericks. Now, he's a two-way contract player with Texas and, I guess, Dallas. But I picked him for number 3 because I honestly think that he needs a 2K update. Looking at his stats, and also I think he is somebody who does actually start to get more minutes with the Mavericks, especially when you see guys like Luka and Kyrie who have been out. I've noticed usually he's more with the team at points. So I think also notable is I think the Mavericks do like him enough that they've kept him around for quite a bit. It was actually probably about a year ago, like right after the G League Showcase in 2023, that the Mavericks signed him to a two-way contract. I thought maybe there was a chance that, you know, he could have gotten cut during training camp after Jazz Gortman had, you know, really had a good training camp with the Mavericks, but they actually ended up cutting AJ Lawson instead and kept Brandon Williams. So it really kind of shows that they've been high on Brandon Williams, and kind of looking at stats, I can kind of see why. So let's kind of look at it. So Brandon Williams, right? I think biggest thing about stats is that he's averaging in 9 games about 38 minutes. He's averaging 28.3 points, 5.6 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 1.9 steals, 0.7 blocks, and free throws, he's getting about 5.2 free throws a game while shooting about 64% from the free throw. And then three-pointers, he's shooting about 8.6 three-pointers a game while making 3.3, and his three-point percentage is 39% from 3. So honestly, I think looking as I kind of went through this list earlier and now as I'm going through it again, I think the biggest thing that stands out is his three-point shooting. That could probably use an update. A 39%, I think maybe a 78 could work here. I mean, I'm also comparing a lot of these to previous kind of attributes I've noticed from other players in the, like previous 2Ks who probably have like similar stats in the G League, but I think maybe he could use a 3-point bump here. I think his passing looks pretty solid. I'd say offensive consistency, that needs to go up, especially if he's averaging 28.3 points per game. I would actually say maybe like a 70 or 75. Again, if he gets minutes with the Mavericks, then he will actually get a chance to kind of show that he deserves, an update on his rating. I think his rebounding, might actually be in an okay level. I think one thing is his steals. Actually, yeah, the fact that he's getting 2 steals a game, that really popped out to me because, 53 for 2 steals, I would actually think that should probably go up, maybe to the 70 range or 65. I think maybe that'll probably go up if he does a really good job on a defensive end in the NBA. And yeah, maybe his defensive consistency could go up if he's, getting at least 2 steals in 9 games. So yeah, I would say I'm really excited about Brandon Williams. He's kind of been in the G League for probably a few years now. I think he's been with Atlanta. He's with the Osceola Magic. I've just been excited to see him throughout the years, and I really do hope he gets more of a chance moving forward. All right, for our second player, Mac McClung. First of all, I think Mac deserves a 2K update, but again, I don't know. His situation with Osceola is really interesting because I actually think they're really heavy at the guard rotation spot. And I'm kind of wondering if he'll get a chance with Orlando this season. I wonder if maybe he'll get a different, team could look at him. And this is, I believe, his 3rd year on a 2-way contract. I think he can sign maybe 1 more year after this. So if he decides to stick it out for another year with a different team, maybe that's his year where he can finally try to break into the NBA. I'd be really curious if he does get a chance. He really is. He's talked about, I think it was like a documentary about, his friends were telling him about like legacy, and, he really wanted to stay and try to continue to, stay in the NBA. That's his goal, is make it and stay. So also, he is a really nice guy. I actually did meet him at the showcase. And we do know some mutual people too, so it was really cool just to connect, and really nice guy. So I'm rooting for him. Let's kind of talk about his rating, and let's talk about some of his stats. So I'm going to actually talk about 2 things, right? I'm going to talk about his stats from last year. I'm going to talk about his stats from this year, and I'll explain why. So from this year, he's averaging in 32.5 minutes per game. He's averaging 19.7 points, 3.4 rebounds, 5.2 assists, 0.7 steals, 0.6 blocks, while shooting 29% from 3, 5.6 attempts, while he's making 1.6 of them. And his free throws is 2.8 attempts, while shooting 87% from free throws. So now I'm going to also talk about his MVP year. And again, there's a reason I'm going to mention why I'm doing this. So last year, with Osceola, he had 25.5 points per game. While he's shooting 38% from 3, he had 7.5 3-pointers a game that he attempted, while making 2.9 of those. He went to the free throw line, 3.2 attempts per game, while making 2.7 of those, shooting 84.6% from free throw, 4.6 rebounds, 6.5 assists, while getting 1.1 steals and 0.5 blocks. Now look, Osceola, I think, has not been as good as probably people thought. I actually thought they were going to blow up their roster a good amount, quite honestly, after the showcase. I remember I was even telling one of my friends this, that if you look at their roster this year, they brought in guys like Jared Culver, Javonte Smart, You also already got Mac there. You already got Trevelyan Queen, who's also on a two-way. I ended up thinking that really did hurt Mac in terms of some of his usage this season. He's not really getting the ball in his hands probably as much because he's having to give it to other guys. And I think that has kind of hurt this team. I think that was my concern with this team is a lot of these guys were really good with their former NBA team, like their G League team. But I was really curious, how are they going to all mesh once they're playing with Osceola this year? And so that has been a bit of a challenge I can imagine for Mac maybe. And that's just something I've been kind of looking more closely. And they just actually got Colin Castleton, who I think will be really good. Castleton is a pretty good passer. I'm actually excited to see how he can kind of help their offense. And I think they won against Sioux Falls when they just played recently. But I think that his dunk, obviously, right? We know, slam dunk champion 95. That's fine. His 3-point shooting could probably go up a little bit. His free throw definitely, I think, needs to go up. He's, I think, shooting, I believe, in the 80 range now. So that definitely needs to go up if 64 is way too low. I think his offensive consistency could maybe go up. Maybe it also goes up to the 70 range. Again, this is if he actually plays minutes in the NBA. His steal, his block, maybe that goes up a little bit, just slightly. I know defensively a lot of people are always saying that's kind of the thing he needs to work on. I do think his offensive rebounding could go up a little bit because I think his athleticism does kind of help him sometimes there. But yeah, I would be really curious to see if he gets a bump, especially if he plays NBA minutes. I think offensively he's really good. So I think that's going to be probably the most interesting thing about Mac moving forward in his career. So for our final player, J.D. Davison of the Boston Celtics, but has mostly been with Maine for honestly the past 3 years. He's not really played much with Boston since he got drafted in 2022 in the second round. But, I think JD has made improvements every year. I thought he's looked really good, as he's played for Maine. So, he's really interesting because he's not going to play in Boston, I think. That's just my personal opinion. I don't think he's going to get playing time with the Celtics. They're just too really guard heavy, with the team. And I don't know. I just don't know if he's going to get a chance in Boston. I would really want a different NBA team just to give him an opportunity. Maybe he could be that next type of Scottie Pippen Jr., Jay Huff, who is doing really well at the NBA G League level, but once they get to the NBA, they need maybe 4 or 5 games, and then they start actually really doing well. So who knows? But if you're an NBA team, maybe you should trade for his 2-way contract, especially if you're looking for a potential backup point guard for your roster. Maybe JD could be that guy for you. But looking at his stats and his 2K rating, he is averaging in 26 games, 34.6 minutes. He is averaging 25.4 points, 4.7 rebounds, 7.8 assists, while getting 1.4 offensive rebounds, 3.3 defensive rebounds, 1.5 steals, 0.8 blocks. He's going to the free throw line 4.4 times a game while making 3.3 of those, so he's getting 76.3% from free throw. He's shooting 4.8 threes a game while making 1.6 of those, and he's shooting about 32.5% from three. And yeah, so I think honestly I did see him when he came to play to Capital City Go-Go recently. I thought this guy is still honestly really good. I was really impressed by his athleticism, by his speed. I think that's the biggest thing about JD is he's really is athletic, and you can see that he uses it. I mean, he was even going out getting offensive rebounds because of his vertical. He can really jump, and that's a really cool thing about him. He's a really tough player. I remember from he hit, or I think it was Baylor Shireman threw us really insane pass all the way from the inbound, from the other side of the court all the way to the other side of the court. JD receives it like a receiver. Like I thought I was watching football, and he gets it and then dunks it within like I think it was like 1.6 seconds. I was really impressed, and then he's just like really furious. Like, he's really pumped, really excited. He's like, they can't guard me, and like just really, really excited, amped up. Like, it was really cool to see that emotion. I think that is something I think that's also, you're not gonna see that in the stats, but I think that's really cool about JD. So, kind of looking at his stats, I think his 3-point shooting is probably in. I think it's kind of in a fair place. I think that's kind of the thing he's still continuing to work on. Maybe his free throw could go up a little bit. I think his drawing foul could go up maybe to the 50 range. That's just me. 73 passing accuracy, I think that's fine. His speed still really solid. Passing vision, I think is good. Maybe you can honestly argue this could go up to an 80 now. Maybe if he's improved that. I think he has improved. I think sometimes he does. I think with his vision, he does look like he's gone better at making the right read. So I could argue that. His offensive consistency definitely needs to go up. I'd say probably like a 70, maybe could be 75. Again, if he actually plays for the Celtics or a different NBA team. His interior defense is interesting here. I would actually be curious if that would ever go up. Perimeter defense, I think that was something that he's kind of been working on throughout the past 3 years. I think he has improved a little bit there. I also think his IQ defensively has probably improved throughout the past 3 years, but his steals, his blocks, I think are fine where it is. And let's see, defensive consistency. Maybe his defensive consistency goes up. That again depends on how he does defensively at the NBA level. So yeah, and his vertical is still really solid. Honestly, maybe his vertical can go up even to like an 88 because he's really, really athletic. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think a different team should trade for JD's two-way contract. I think more teams should trade for two-way contracts just in general. My viewpoint is it's a low risk, high reward type of situation. You just never know. Because if you're going to anyway draft a second rounder, you just give up a second round pick for a two-way contract for a guy you think could be a really good player, you're going to most likely have to develop that second rounder anyway, probably 2-3 years. So giving up a second round pick for a two-way contract, I think taking a guy who's probably really ready to play in the NBA and who just needs his opportunity, maybe you go with that guy. That's just my viewpoint. So I'd be curious to see if JD is going to go, like where he's going to go next. He's not going to be able to come back to Boston on a two-way contract. You can only play with an NBA team on 3 two-way contracts. You can't go more than that. So really this is his last year that he can play for the Celtics on a two-way. Otherwise, if the Celtics really want to keep him, he's going to be on their 15-man roster. If not, he will probably be on a different NBA team, maybe even on another two-way with a different team, because that would really be his last year next year if that ends up being the case. But yeah, I think that's it for this video. So leave your comments down below. If you thought I missed somebody on this list, please let me know. I'm really curious if there was somebody that you felt like who's also balling out in the G League, who also deserves a 2K rating update. Again, these guys all need to play NBA minutes to actually get their rating update, but I think these are guys who maybe in the future could get an opportunity and could really show out for an NBA team. But yeah, let me know what you think below, and if you watch this video, feel free to subscribe, like, or dislike, because hey, you do you. So this is the NBA 2K G League show. I'm your host, Varun Charya, and peace.